Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's tool shop session, The Importance of Data in Telling Your Story. My name is Zach Zimmerman. I'm the Data and Research Manager for the Graduate Network, and I'm joined today by Annette Matei, the Research Director for Data That Move Us. For today's session, we'll start with an overview of the importance of data collection in working with and advising adult learners and comebackers. Then we'll take a look at some of the findings from the newest report to come out of the Data That Move Us research project called The Comeback Story. Some of you may have seen it highlighted in an email that went out to attendees last Friday, and maybe some of you have even had the chance to read through some of it, which would be really great. Then we will look at how you can use your data to evaluate your program and make planning decisions, along with a system overview of the comeback tracker and how you can use the tools in the comeback tracker in your planning. And then finally, we'll talk about how you can be a part of our data collection efforts and help our research. We'll have some time for questions at the end, so feel free to enter any questions you have in the chat as we go along, and we will be sure to address them. So before we jump in, we want to start this session with a quick poll to kind of get a feel for the room and your comfort level for working with data. So I'm going to put a poll up here. You can answer it in the first couple. We have like 30 seconds to answer it. Great, I'm going to share the results. It looks like everybody is at least somewhat comfortable, and some of you are very comfortable or extremely comfortable. That's really good to hear. Let me close this out here. All right, so when we think of the importance of collecting data and using it to tell stories, we see that happening at several different levels. Or what we refer to as the 50,000-foot view. That would be the national and network level. Looking across the network so that we can contribute insights and findings from our population to the field of study. And that's really what the Data That Move Us is all about. If we zoom in a little bit more, what we call the 20,000-foot view, that is the graduate network site directors. It's really hard to run a program without collecting data, and each community can be very thoughtful and intentional about program development and evaluation, asking important questions like, how well are we implementing our program activities and interventions, and more importantly, are they having the intended impact on our population? And then if we zoom down even further to the ground level, that is the advisors who are working with comebackers on a daily basis. So whether you're using the comeback tracker system or not, chances are that you're working with comebackers, that you're collecting data. So our hope is that in this session inspires you to use that data to tell your own story. And we also invite you to be a part of our national data collection efforts. So let's take a quick look at what the importance of data collection is at that zoomed out national network level. So first of all, more data means stronger data set, means more accurate reporting, and more powerful predictive analytics. The graduate network is in a really unique position of being able to aggregate data from all our communities across the country, each with their own interesting story to tell. So in order to make good use of this data, the graduate network needs the data to be clean and uniform as much as possible, so we can easily aggregate this data and tell the story of adult education across the country. Data can be used to draw the interest of national organizations. So the idea of data driving everything has never been more true than it is today. More and more organizations are not only interested in seeing results, but seeing the data that supports those results. So as we build our nationwide data set, we'll be able to run new and interesting analysis that can put our work on the radar of national organizations. We can also use this to bring the Adult Post-Secondary Education Initiative to the spotlight. So reports like the comeback story, which I mentioned at the top of the call, a recent Data That Move Us report between collaboration between New America and the Graduate Network, that's a really great example of how data can be used to tell a story and to tell that story at the national level. And we'll hear more about that later in today's session from Annette. So if we zoom in a little bit to the 20,000-foot view, the directors, data collection is really crucial to a director's work. So directors use data to manage their advising team. As advising teams and caseloads grow, so does the need for good data collection. A director can run a report in Salesforce that shows activities of the advisors as well as the progress of the comebackers are making. So through reports, a director can make decisions about caseload size, staff development, and ensure that an advising team is reaching their potential without being overwhelmed by caseload size. In addition, directors can run reports to show the overall quality of the data that's being collected by the staff. Somebody on our last call mentioned that they use their data to do just that. They use dashboards in the comeback tracker. You can also use data to make informed decisions around advising practices and outreach. Collecting data about your comebacker population is key to understanding the community's needs. By understanding the demographic makeup of your community, as well as gathering data on what pressing academic needs are prevalent in your community of comebackers, you can really better adapt your advising practices and strategize your outreach efforts. Reporting to your supervisors, data has always been a key aspect of reporting progress, and that has only increased as the focus on data collection has become more widespread. And then data can be used to attract new funders and partners to your organization. Having a really robust data set is a really great way to attract new funders or partners to your organization. Funders want to see that your program is effective, and partners want to see that working with your organization can be mutually beneficial to them. Analysis of a really solid data set can provide both of those things. Once you have partners and funders on board, continued reporting through data analysis will be key to keeping them as your organization grows. And if we zoom in even further to the ground level, the advisor working with the comebackers day to day, data helps you work with comebackers. It's just, it's that simple. Collecting data on comebackers' educational goals and prior attainment are key starting points to quality advising. So what you might not realize is that collecting data on comebackers' demographics can also help in advising. Collecting data points such as age, race or ethnicity, socioeconomic information, this can all help you as an advisor to better understand your student's life and help you identify a type of student aid that they might be eligible for. So I'm going to hand it over to Annette now to talk about some of the Data That Move Us reports.
Thanks, Zach, appreciate it. And hi, everyone, my name is Annette Mate. I'm the research director of Data That Move Us. Data That Move Us is an initiative of the Graduate Network. I like to think of us as the network's research arm. What we do is we pull together data collected by all of you at the community level, the program and administrative data you're collecting just to run your programs, and we stitch it together into a larger aggregated data set, and we analyze it for the purpose of coming up with findings. And as Zach said, we're operating at the 50,000-foot level. Our goal is to help shape policy at the federal and state level. And we're also looking with our findings to drive institutional change in higher education institutions. And we're also looking to help practitioners and researchers and administrators change the way we talk about this population of people who have earned some college credit, but not the degree. And already there's been tremendous success in changing the language, the stories we tell about this population. For example, instead of calling them former students, we call them comebackers. instead of saying that they've dropped out of school, we say they've stopped out, which suggests that it's their intention to go back and finish. And so we feel that we sit in a very unique position within the field, and that we're collecting data that's truly unique. We're collecting data directly from comebackers themselves, and we're collecting it over time. We're following them, even when they've gone on to if they've gone on to re-enroll and our contact with them diminishes, we still follow them to make sure they make it to graduation. And so in this regard, we have something very unique to contribute to the field. And on that score, the Data That Move Us is regularly putting out research reports. You see two of them in front of you. On the left is the white paper we released at LearnX last year. And on the right is our latest research report called The Comeback Story. You may have heard about it earlier in the sessions with Hadass and Iris. This is a major 2-year study that we completed with New America and is now officially out there. So today I'm gonna share 2 examples from the report of how we are using data to tell the network story. But before we do that, we wanted to see if you remembered some of the findings in earlier sessions were shared with you, and we wanted to see if you remembered some of the things that were talked about. So we have another polling question for you. And the question is, so of comebackers who come in and engage with the network, went on to re-enroll and then graduate, what percentage of them did so without stopping out again? So you can go ahead and take the poll, and then we'll show you the results in about 30 seconds. Okay, great. I think we have our results. This is great. Almost half of you answered 69%. And if we go to the next slide, you will see that you were right. This is a very interesting finding from our research. It's actually something that we've seen over the years, and we keep verifying it. So this number feels very stable to me. Of the comebackers who engage with a network program, go on to re-enroll and then graduate, 69% do so without stopping out again, which I really think is an amazing testament to the tremendous motivation and determination of this population. And in fact, as part of our research, we did a survey of comebackers where we were digging a little deeper to understand this number. We learned that many comebackers are motivated by intrinsic reasons to go back and finish their degrees. So they talked about wanting to complete a personal goal, or wanting to complete their degree because it would give them personal satisfaction. And increasingly, we're hearing from comebackers who say that they want to be a positive role model for their family, which is really wonderful to learn about. Of course, there are some comebackers who talk about wanting to go back to school so they can improve their economic and career prospects. But we think that's very tied up with personal goals as well. What you don't hear about all that often are people who go back to school to finish their degrees because it was required for a job or a promotion. So something to keep in mind. This is a very interesting finding about the population and how we talk about them within the field. So next slide, please. But this is not the story of every comebacker who come through our doors. There's another pathway, and this is that 1 out of 5 comebackers who engages with a network program and then goes on to graduate, they stop out at least once on their way to graduation. And in fact, 5% of this group stop out 2 or more times on their way to graduation. So yeah, this was another interesting finding. And in our qualitative research, we were able to talk directly with comebackers to understand why this is happening. Changes in personal situation, such as a change in marital status, or maybe new caretaker responsibilities they had to take on, or maybe illness, especially in this day and age. And so that caused them to put their education journey on pause. But we also heard about comebackers who were simply trying to balance their school and work life, including the very logistical question of working out when you can take certain classes that are available only at certain times and balancing that with your work schedule. So some people are simply waiting for the right time to enroll in the classes that they need. And I know all of you know that firsthand, working with comebackers directly. Some comebackers spoke about financial difficulties, such as running out of finance a long time. Talk about longer or edge journey on pause. Maybe there was unexpected job loss. Can you hear me okay? Okay, I got a weird note from my computer. Unexpected job loss or a loss of income, perhaps due to medical bills or something of that nature. And when we dug even deeper in this finding, we learned that folks who fall into the lowest income bracket are more likely to stop out on their way to graduation than other income groups. But the good news is that when we ask all these folks who were in stop out on their way to graduation, it was 100% of them still had the goal of wanting to complete their degree. They were simply in a dormant period and waiting for the right time to get back on track. Next slide, please. So when we take these data points together, it's our goal to tell a new story. In the higher education world, there's a lot of focus on this idea of persistence. And it's true that a lot of research out there suggests that if students are persistent in their enrollment, meaning that they start in their freshman year in the fall and come back in their sophomore year for the fall, that they've persisted, that it is true, the research shows that they are likely to go on and graduate. But clearly our population does not fit this bill by definition. And we want to change the idea from persistence to perseverance. When you hear the word persistence, you think of nonstop movement toward or progress toward a goal. Some of the synonyms of persistence are firm and unrelenting, even obstinate, when really I think a more apt concept for our population is perseverance, and that these are individuals who are overcoming obstacles and navigating detours toward a goal steadfastly, despite difficulty and delay. They're making it. Starts and stops are not unusual, and eventually they make it. And so our report is filled with first-person quotes from comebackers we spoke to that animate this idea of perseverance. And so we're out there talking about a new story of comebackers. Next slide, please. Another data finding I wanted to share with you that we're using to help tell a new story about comebackers is the last pathway that we uncovered in our research. And these are comebackers that have what we're calling an immediate graduation. So 1 in 10 comebackers who engaged with a network program and went on to graduate were conferred a degree immediately after they enrolled. So in other words, they never matriculated. It was almost an administrative transaction. And this really stunned me. In fact, I had my data analysts go back and rerun this number several times because it really stunned me that so many people had this type of graduation. But when we had the opportunity to talk directly with comebackers, we learned that in fact, this is not an unusual situation. There are a lot of people who have not been conferred a degree because of some sort of administrative tangle or mix-up. Perhaps there was paperwork that they didn't submit properly or at all, and so they officially have not been conferred a degree. We also spoke with comebackers who had financial hurdles they were able to overcome. Hadassah and Iris talked about this in the session earlier this afternoon, how institutional student debt is a true deal breaker for many comebackers. It's the policy of many higher education institutions and even some states that a student cannot be conferred a degree until they clear a back balance due with the school. We also heard stories of comebackers who had an immediate graduation because they were able to transfer enough credit or earn credit through prior learning assessment, and they were basically repackaged a 4-year degree, or they were reverse engineered a 2-year degree. So I just have this vision of all these people kind of bunched up right at the finish line, waiting to cross. And thanks to much of the efforts of your programs, helping them figure out the right pathway to get over the finish line and to find the right school that will help them over the finish line, is such a wonderful thing. There are people just waiting there to get their degrees. And this population, obviously, these are a group of people who already come to us, even though they're technically stopped out. They have a lot of academic progress under their belt. In fact, the National Student Clearinghouse has given a name to this group. They call them potential completers. These are people who had accumulated at least 2 years of academic progress or more before stopping out. And so we wanted to look a little deeper at this population. So next slide, please. So this slide is looking at potential completers. Again, people who had at least 2 years worth of academic progress before they stopped out. This is a breakdown of all the people coming in our door as they're engaging with us, whether they completed a single term, multiple terms, or potential completers. And as you see, 44% of people who are coming in our doors are potential completers. And yet the national population of potential completers is only about 10%. So more than 4 times the number of potential completers are coming in our doors than are in the national population. Yet another measure of showing how absolutely motivated this population is to get their degree. And we wanted to dig even deeper into this population. So if you go to the next slide, we blew it out. This is just looking at potential completers, and we have it divided by whether they completed 2 to 3 years of academic progress, 3 to 4, or even more than 4 years of academic progress. And as you can see, 61% of people who engage with a network program had close to or even more than 4 years of academic progress under their belt. Again, this vision of people, they are poised to cross the finish line if the right people are there to support them and guide them along that path. And that's what the network is all about. And so on the next slide, this is another story we're looking to tell, a news story. We don't want to talk about failures or shortcomings. We don't want to dwell on why people have all this academic progress under their belt. What we want to do is tap into their untapped potential, tremendous untapped potential. And it's our job to be out there telling their story, because the world needs to look at them in a different way. We need to get away from this deficit mindset and embrace one of asset-based thinking. And so these are 2 examples of how we're trying to take data and use it to tell compelling stories about the population. It's one thing to throw graphs up and show people and hope they take meaning from it, but we're being very intentional on how we visualize the data and the story we're telling about the data. So that's the 50,000 foot level. That's where I'm working with my research team. But I think data for storytelling also has an important role to play at the community and the program level, which is where all of you operate, or at least many of you operate. This is, you can go to the next slide. This is more like the 20,000 foot level. So Data That Move Us is not really doing program evaluation, but it's something we very much support all of you doing. I'm sure some of you are doing this, and it's our intention today to share with you some ideas on how you could go about doing program evaluation to contribute to the network learnings, which we in turn intend to share with the field. Some general thoughts of before. What's interesting to me about the Graduate Network is even though we all share a common goal, and we even share a common, in many instances, a common client tracking system, the comeback tracker many of you use, there is no prescribed program when you're part of the network. All the communities are implementing their own plans and coming up with their own activities based on what works in their community and what the needs are in their community. And also, what's interesting about our programs is many of us operate with an open door policy. Anyone can come in. There are no eligibility requirements. You can have as much advising assistance as you like. So these are all really interesting aspects of our problem. And in a way, we're kind of like operating multiple experiments at the community level. I kind of see this as a laboratory of figuring out what works with this population. And so I see there's tremendous opportunity to learn about what works through our programs. And the way we do this is through program evaluation. So for the next 2 slides, I'm just going to share with you a rough game plan of how you might consider doing program evaluation in your communities. So there are 2 general types of program evaluation. The wonky terms are formative evaluation and summative evaluation. Formative evaluation is basically looking at the work that you're planning to do or are already implementing. And it's asking key questions such as, who are we serving? And are they the intended population? And I think this is a really important question for all of you to be asking, especially as programs with open door policies. Are people coming in the door that we are expecting? And you can be collecting data on them related to their demographics, such as race and ethnicity or their socioeconomic status. You can collect data on their background, such as how much academic progress they've completed. You can ask them questions about interests and motivations, and all these fields are built into the Comeback Tracker system. And just by way of example, in our own research at Data That Move Us, we've come to learn that a lot of people are coming in the doors who are still enrolled, but are at risk of stopping out. Something's happening. They're either struggling academically or they're facing a financial challenge, and they're seeking assistance outside of their schools in order to stay on track. And so we're trying to start a conversation about how can we keep people from becoming part of the some college, no degree. So this is a really important question to be asking, especially in this new pandemic environment. Are people starting to be in touch with you who you hadn't heard from before? And it's important to pay attention to what they're telling you. Another key question that you should be asking in a formative evaluation is, have we implemented the activities we had planned to do with fidelity? So again, given that there's no prescribed program, each of us has different levels of participation, quote unquote dosage, and duration. So, how many sessions are people coming in for? What's the length of the session? What's the period of time over which these sessions are happening? And these are things that we're looking at the Data That Move Us level as well. But it's important for you to be looking in them at the program level so we can kind of understand what seems to work. And then finally, you want to ask questions about the quality of your activity. So what do comebackers feel about the environment in which they're receiving services? How do they feel, for example, virtual versus in-person? How do they feel about engagement? Do they like one-on-one versus being in a group or a workshop setting? And then finally, rapport. I know some of the community programs have adopted the practice of appreciative counseling. It would be really, really interesting to evaluate if how comebackers are receiving this type of counseling and how does it compare to a more traditional form of counseling. So in formative evaluation, these are the sorts of questions you would want to be asking. Next slide, please. A summative evaluation, on the other hand, kind of flips to the other side of the equation. And now you're looking at it from the comebackers' perspective, asking, in the end, what difference did it make for them? And in other words, what are their outcomes? And with outcomes, you're generally thinking about the time horizon, whether it was in the short term, whether the outcome was in the medium term, or whether it was in the long term. Now, there are no hard and fast rules on what constitutes short versus medium versus long, but I put in here just some rough guidelines. Short term often can be like less than a year, medium term maybe 1 to 2 years, and long term 2+ years, which I think somewhat aligns at least what we've seen in the data. But really, it's for you to decide what's appropriate for your program. But what you do want to keep in mind is that in the short term, what you're looking for are changes in attitude or education or awareness. So when you are working with a comebacker, are you seeing them displaying an understanding that there's a pathway back to school for them? Are you seeing them being motivated? Do you see them planning to get back on track? Those sorts of questions. In the medium term, you're looking for changes in behavior or actions. So has the comebacker actually taken steps to apply? And if they were accepted somewhere, did they enroll? These are just a couple examples of what metrics you might want to look at. But ultimately, we're after long-term outcomes. And then what you want to look for in that case are changes in their condition or status. So first and foremost, obviously, we want to see them graduate. That would be a change in status. But you also might want to look even a little further out. Does having a degree, has it helped them improve their economic well-being? And maybe even further out, are you seeing any intergenerational benefits because of your work with them? So this is ultimately what we're after. It's important, the two kinds of evaluation, you probably want to be doing a little of both, but something for you all to think about, and we're certainly available to advise you as you think about your evaluation activities. So that's kind of at the 20,000 foot level. And now we're going to take it down to the ground level and talk about the system itself. So I'm going to hand it back to Zach.
Thanks, Annette. Before we jump into a kind of quick and general system overview, I have another poll for everybody. I want to get a sense of how you are doing data collection currently. So you'll see a poll pop up in a second. We'll give you about 30 seconds to respond. Okay, let me share the results here. Looks like we have a pretty good chunk of people who are using the comeback tracker.
Great.
I mean, about the same amount of people using some other system or spreadsheet or something not listed here. So it's good to see that most people are collecting data in some way. So let me just give everyone a quick overview of the way we collect data through the comeback tracker. Graduate Network Communities it's a custom installation of Salesforce that we've created that we call the comeback tracker. It was designed to aid advisors in working with comebackers by gathering data on comebackers' path back to college. The two primary ways that we collect these data are through the comebacker page and the college student page. So here you can see some of the important data points that are collected on the comebacker page and the college student page. The comebacker page tracks information about the comebackers and their experiences returning to college. So we start by collecting some basic contact information, phone number, email address, mailing address, along with the comebacker's preferred method of communication. Basically, we just need some way to stay in contact with them. And we collect some demographic information, such as gender, race and ethnicity, date of birth, whether they're a US military veteran, stuff like that. And as I mentioned before, this can be useful in helping to identify what type of financial aid is available to the comebacker you're working with. We also like to get a good sense of their previous college experience up to this point. And this is really just to the best of the comebacker's recollection. Sometimes it can be a long time since the person has been enrolled in college and they don't really have the details. So it can range from, I know I took a few courses in the early 2000s till I have 45 credits at this specific institution and I want to see if they can transfer. Really, any amount of background information is helpful. We also ask comebackers about the reason or reasons that they have stopped out in the first place. Then we collect data on their current education goals. This includes their current area of interest, of study, the type of degree that they might be seeking. It also includes, if the comebackers thought this far in advance, an estimated timeline for re-enrollment, just to get a sense of how ready are they to return and what that process might look like. And then also any schools that they might be interested in if they've given that some thought. We track on the comebacker page their current education progress as the advising process moves along. And we do this, this progress is summarized in two fields that are called the life cycle role and the life cycle stage. These fields help track where a comebacker is in their journey to earning a degree. It starts from inquiry when they're first reaching out to a graduate network community, and it goes from there to through the process of re-enrollment and then finally graduation. So these two data points help advisors see at a glance where a comebacker is and what type of advising they need. And then finally, and potentially the most importantly, all advising activities are tracked on the comebacker page. We really encourage and urge our advisors to make sure that they record every interaction with the comebacker, because having this unbroken record of the advising process really helps to tell the story, that comebacker story of re-enrollment, and is really aids in the advising process. It also helps us as the graduate network, as we look at this nationwide data, helps us get a better sense of what goes into advising a comebacker to and through college. And then quickly, we look at the college student page. This is a record, or the college student page keeps a record of the comebacker's connection to a college, or it could be multiple colleges if they're enrolled or previously enrolled in several different schools. The college student page is mainly a way to track the comebacker's progress at a particular school, and it tracks the current enrollment status, the credits earned up to this point, the area of study and degree type, and then an estimated graduation date. We also create this college student page for schools that a comebacker has attended in the past. We find it really important to get the full picture of the comebacker's education experience. And through the comebacker page and the college student page, we can create a connection that helps fill out that picture. So as Annette mentioned earlier, evaluation is really key for growth and planning. And two excellent ways to evaluate your data and your program are through reports and data dashboards, and both of those things are built into the comeback tracker. So you can create a report to present data or analyze data from any data point that's collected in the system in the comeback tracker. I'm going to jump back to this slide that Annette showed earlier, outlining some ways of formative evaluation, just to kind of use them as examples of types of reports that you could run in Salesforce to help you in planning. So the first one here with the demographics, background, interests, and motivations, getting a sense of your population, you can create a report in the comeback tracker that highlights these data points, and then you can analyze them and what your population looks like and who you're serving. With this view of your organization, you can plan around the reality that is your comebacker population, their interests, their engagement level, their needs. So reports can also be exported and shared with your partner colleges or funders as a way to show impact. So the data that you have, that you're collecting, is a really powerful tool in telling your story, creating interest in the work that you do. So looking back at the data dashboards, they can provide a real-time visualization of your data. Dashboards in the comeback tracker can be used, just as a few examples, to show advisor activity, to show you the number of new comebackers who have been entered into your comeback tracker over just the last week or last month, or show you the number of comebackers that are in each life cycle role, so you get a sense of where your comebacker population is at in their progress. Dashboards can be a really great tool for planning outreach and events or managing advisor caseloads. And because data dashboards update in real time, you're always going to get a current snapshot of your data and comebacker activity. So now that I've given you kind of an overview of what the comeback tracker does, I can also tell you that we're about to embark on an effort to improve what we already have. We're partnering with a local Philadelphia organization called Tech Impact to do a third-party assessment of the comeback tracker. So as you can see laid out in the slide here, phase 1 is going to start in October and probably go through to the end of the year. And that's going to include an audit or an assessment of the 2 pages that I kind of walked you through quickly today, comebacker and college student page, just to make sure that, you know, we're being as efficient as we can with the data we collect. And then also interviews with communities who are currently using the comeback tracker. So if you're in a community who is currently using comeback tracker, you can expect to hear from us in the next couple of months as we can, or as Tech Impact conducts these interviews to get a sense of how you use comeback tracker, things you like, things you don't like, things that you think are missing, things that you think can be removed, stuff like that. And then phase 2 will be the implementation of these findings, and that will take place over the first half of 2021. And some of the outcomes that we're hoping to get from this are streamlining the comebacker page and the college student page, providing you with a standardized set of reports and dashboards that you can use for your planning or for working with partners, an updated set of best practices and training materials based on the upgrades that we're doing, and then also a guided migration to Salesforce Lightning. Salesforce Lightning is a new updated version of Salesforce that's been kind of a slow rollout over the last year and a half or so. They've been constantly updating it, adding new features, tweaking things, and it's gotten to the point where I think we're ready to use that as our standard and encourage our communities to use that. So we will help you, if you're used to Salesforce Classic, help you learn the differences to Salesforce Lightning. You don't actually have to migrate your data. It's just really, you flip a switch and it's mostly visual what you're seeing, the way things are laid out. So that will hopefully take us into to May of 2021 with all those new features implemented. Okay, and with that, I'm going to hand it back to Annette to talk about how you can be a part of our data collection effort.
Great, thank you. So really, we hope that we certainly want to present this as a mutually beneficial thing, and we hope you view it that way too. In fact, as we've gone through this presentation, I think we should have named it how to use data to tell our story, because I feel it's a story we're telling together. You're telling it in your communities and we're telling your story, the story nationally. But there's some very concrete ways where we feel we can help you and how you can help us. So first and foremost, we can, and we're doing this for many of you already, but we can augment the data you're collecting for program and administrative purposes with official student enrollment records from the National Student Clearinghouse. Zach mentioned earlier that, of course, when we first engage with a comebacker, we do ask them about how much credit they've earned in the past, but it's often kind of fuzzy and not very, very reliable information. If we're able to make a match with National Student Clearinghouse, this is an official record of their enrollment. And we do this twice a year. It's called the NSC verification process. We do it in the spring and in the fall. In fact, we're gearing up to do our next one in October. If you're using the comeback tracker, we'll be reaching out to you as automatically. But for those of you who are using a different data system or even in a spreadsheet, if you're collecting the name and date of birth, we'd like to have a conversation with you, because these are the fields that we use to match records against the National Student Clearinghouse. And we are very happy to include you in the data we upload to NSC. And if we get a match, we'll send back the records to you and you can use them as you would like to use them. You can view the data, the findings that we're putting out through data that move us as benchmarks for your own program. For example, if you want to understand how many potential completers are coming in your door, you could hold that up against our numbers. Or maybe you want to set a target based on that. But we hope you view the reports that we're coming out with as something you can use for benchmarking. And then finally, of course, Zach and I are always available to advise on technical issues, whether they're system related to the comeback tracker, or if you have questions about data or evaluation, I'm happy to consult with you on that as well. How you can help us is by adding your data to our study set. Like I said, if you're participating in the NSC verification process, by default, we ask permission for you to include your records in our data set. But again, if you're using other systems or spreadsheet, we'd love to talk to you. The more data we can gather, the more robust our data set is. We're really dependent on you for data. And this is the heart of our quantitative data collection. If you're doing program evaluation or embarking on it, we encourage you to share your program learnings. There's even opportunity for us to incorporate your program learnings into our own research, including the predictive analysis that we run every year. And then finally, we're getting more into qualitative research. I mentioned earlier, we are doing more focus groups and interviews and even surveying, collecting first-person stories that we're using to add color and animate the data that we collect at an aggregate level. And so if you're collecting comebacker stories too, we encourage you to share them with us. That's our primary qualitative data. And we love to read the stories, and they really, they make it into our reports. For your information, there are lots of resources out there on storytelling with data. I regularly visit a website called storytellingwithdata.com. They do great stuff. And the style that I showed you today of the graphs is very much in keeping with their style. And also just wanted to tell you that our research continues. We have funding from Ascendium to continue over the next year. So we're really excited to be embarking on that. And for sure, we'll be in touch with you to see if you can be part of that. So that's the conclusion of our presentation.